So this morning I've been thinking about happiness
Mhm.
and what it is and how we um, create it. I'll say that instead of just how do we find it or how do we how does it come to us? And of course this is an age old question of interest because we all want to be happy. And as we all know, fundamentally, that was what the Buddha's whole teaching was about, how to overcome or put an end to suffering, the opposite of happiness, dukkha. And the Buddha was really very clear about, what constitutes dukkha or discomfort or um, discontent and, all of the rest that we would say are not happiness, and what it is to be happy. And, for many people in the world, um, I don't know, is that, I don't know if what I was about to say is true. I was going to say for many people in the world, happiness really seems to come with the gratification of our senses, the what we see, hear, taste, touch, smell, that's what makes us happy. And, but I also think that for many people who've never heard the Buddhist teachings at all, they still know that there is something much bigger than that or deeper than that that really brings happiness to us in our life. I just happened to see a New York Times article that just came out. There's a group that's starting a study, 5-year study, um, really looking at the factors that create happiness. Like, what's the happiest country in the world? We've heard about these things before. They say Finland, is the happiest. I've heard recently, and in this study, they said that they're trying to look at more different kinds of factors that people might identify as making their life happier. Because a lot of times the assumption that is made, they say, is that the more wealth we have, the wealthier a country is, the happier the people will be. But it doesn't quite turn out to be like that. And so this 5-year project is 1 year in, and they're about to publish their results this week for the first year. And they are finding that overall, across 6 continents and I don't know, 22 countries maybe or something that they've been, you know, surveying 200,000 people, that as the uh, gross national product rises, so the wealth of a country rises, there's actually a bit of a decline in the level of happiness. Whereas a lot of times the assumption, as I said, is the more wealth you have, the more comfort you have, the more control you have, the more choices you have, the happier you'll be. And many of us who are devoted to spiritual practice obviously are doubtful of that anyway, because there's so much more to happiness than getting what we want materially, obviously. And in this study, some of the things, the early kind of preview of their report suggests that when people, uh, as a country, are more likely to engage in spiritual practice, like the one country they cited was Indonesia, that there is a higher level of happiness in general. So that's certainly a significant part. And I think that, and of course, the Buddha talked about, there's happiness on a sensual, kind of conventional worldly level, and then there's spiritual happiness, which has a different quality to it. And I'm sure everybody who's listening to this knows this, right? But have you really thought about what the factors are that contribute to that? In the last night's sutta study, we came across this word in Pali, um, para, para, oh, I can't remember exactly how it's spelled, but it can mean like a resource for the mind or a requisite or um, and sometimes translated as an ornament of the mind. And in our exploration around generosity, this is one of the things the Buddha says about generosity. Like being generous, we know how that can lift up the heart. Giving without attachment, giving because we want to really offer someone something that's good for them, and doing it very selflessly, how much that can bring joy and enthusiasm and happiness to our own experience. And that the Buddha calls this a resource for the mind. This helps the mind to be uplifted, and the mind being uplifted really kind of then evokes or conditions the mind for even more kinds of happiness, the kind of spiritual joy and um, stillness, tranquility, peaceful mind, and then the opening up of the mind to insight, to really seeing more directly how things are. And so this kind of resource for the mind, something that can, give us that kind of uplift that helps us to be able to experience the changes in life in a more equanimous manner with more inner resource and stability. So have you ever kind of really looked, because the Buddha is always encouraging us to reflect how our meditation practice is affecting us? Maybe certain techniques that we use in meditation, how is it helping us? And sometimes we can go through periods, and many people talk about this, can have some period of time where you're meditating pretty regularly, and then it kind of falls away. We get busy or distracted, or something else happens, and then there's less meditation. It's good to reflect on how is the general feeling in the mind. Is the mind more uplifted, or is it more easily disturbed, easily triggered into unwholesome states? And so as we kind of use this life as a laboratory, as an experiment, we can begin to notice the patterns. And I think the theme that comes through over and over again in the Buddhist teachings is that there are some fundamentals that are really important, generosity being one of them, and moral virtue, and the Buddha wasn't saying, you should just do these things because they're right, or because you're told that this is the way to behave, but to do them seeing the results. How much more peaceful and happy we are if we're truthful. How much more peaceful and happy we are if we don't kill anything. And this, it's an interesting experiment. If your conditioning has been to just do away with any living beings that aren't uh, where you want them to be, or acting the way you want them to act, which is the way I was raised, um, to moving towards really taking care of living beings. And so all of these things that fall under the sort of umbrella of um, moral virtue, 5 precepts, you can experiment with. Well, it's sometimes when people say, I can't take the precepts because, I want to have some alcohol from time to time. And I say, okay, take 4.5 precepts, and then, you know, or take the 5 precepts for a week and see how that feels, or a month, or, like just try it and really reflect on how the mind is when you're doing things that are not in line with the precepts. How does it feel? And of course, there are some consequences that don't reveal themselves right away. And over time, of course, when we follow not just the 5 precepts, but also the rest of the Noble Eightfold Path, we do start to develop our faith, our confidence that what the Buddha is telling us leads to more happiness actually does lead to more happiness. And that generosity and virtue and our practices of meditation, mindfulness, and how much, whatever kind of depth of peace and immersion we can experience, that these actually lift up the, you might say, lifts the standard of the happiness, and I guess I'm looking for something a little bit more profound, the meaning, the purpose, um, the sort of basic stability of the mind and the basic stability and happiness of our life in a profoundly unstable situation, this human existence in the world, constantly changing, with many dangers. And yet, these preconditions or ornaments of the mind or resources for the mind are really protective of our well-being. And you can really see some striking examples that we hear about of people in, very difficult situations who maintain a sense of fundamental stability and happiness, or safety. And then, if we look at one of the very strong fundamental components in this is giving, or being in service to others. And I was reading a little bit about the work of Pope Francis. He passed away last week, and really appreciating his dedication to the poor, to immigrants, to people who have been disenfranchised in one way or another in the world, and his many trips to outlying areas to encourage people and to support them, and bringing us a sense of humility to the office of Pope. And, even though it's surrounded by so much, I don't know, pomp, and also some, kind of incredible authority. And he was really so humble, a real public servant, and then we can look at other realms of human experience like politics, and you can see such a difference among those who really take up leadership in their country or their community from a place of service to serve the public rather than to use their position for power and gain. And the Buddha talked about this the same way with monastics. He said, really make sure you don't use the monastic life for gain, for fame, for, power, but to use it to be in service and to be developing the mind in a way that's actually beneficial for yourself and for everyone around you, for everyone you touch, to really be giving. Ajahn not talking about being a giver. And it's like whether we're wherever we work, wherever we live, whatever our family and situation is with people we live with, if we come to it from that attitude of being a giver, and also giving to ourselves. So this idea that there's some benefit in martyrdom of like giving, and never having the resourcing ourselves. This is not a Buddhist concept, as far as I can tell. We see that in Christianity, certainly, and maybe in other philosophies, but at least in early Buddhism, you don't really see that. What you see is this identification of what's really supportive to the mind, to the heart, to our being happy and cared for on a material level, to a point of being able to be healthy and comfortable enough so that we can practice and develop the mind. But this idea of self-deprivation, the Buddha said, it doesn't work. He tried it. And what helps us all is to have what's sufficient. And he also didn't condemn in any way having wealth. It just depends on how you get it and how you use it as to whether or not it brings happiness. I'm not sure if the studies that are underway to see, what's the happiest country, where do people live in a way that brings real happiness, is looking deeply enough into those questions, but we can see it ourselves. And we can be happy in our whatever situation we find ourselves in, or maybe sometimes we need to make some changes because of conditions that are too oppressive. If we can move away from that. But what I mean is, like, whether we live in a country that generally is sort of riddled with discontent, or whether we live in a place where things are more peaceful, individually, we can make a lot of choices about how we relate to whatever it is that's around us. We can bring happiness into the situation. So as we're practicing developing our confidence, practicing developing our generosity, practicing developing our virtue, our learning, our wisdom, it's so important to reflect. What is this practice yielding? How might I bring more of what's useful in and let go of more of what's distracting or depleting? And as we do that, and we develop the mind, of course, the higher levels of happiness open up for us, seeing more directly the way things are and seeing that we can let go of more and more attachment until we're free from suffering entirely. So I'd like to hear any questions or comments, maybe about where this seems difficult or unclear, or maybe down more in the specifics of how do we move through certain challenges or whatever. Any thoughts?
Hi, I'll share. But I will not have the video on because it's placed in a state of disarray. But in terms of on this topic, I feel that one has to unburden oneself with all this physical stuff, and that helps get into the direction of living a bit more simply and happier. But this I realized that self-love is really the key of even trying to let go of emotional burdens and yes, that's what I was trying to say. And it brings it allows the heart to be a little bit more equanimous in letting go. And it helps with self-esteem. It helps with I see this is my experience with a few Asian women, and my mother. She was very much codependent on living through her son, and a lot of well, there's a woman I know. She lives through her son. She would be up at 4 to make his breakfast and lunch, and she would rush back to make his dinner. And he's not young. He's 28. They live together. So and I realize it has to do with self-esteem. If you have that, you can stand and be with yourself. But I think in terms of generosity, um, helping a group meditate to develop that grounding within the self helps. I'm not really being very articulate, but I'm trying to. Those are the points.
Yeah, I think you hit a number of really good points, and I agree. So, this idea of loving ourselves, this is a big question in our sort of, I don't know, is it Western? Is it kind of more materialistic culture? I'm not sure. But it's like, yeah, what does it mean to love yourself? And or to see ourselves as on a sort of equal par with others. This is what happens, it seems to me, as we let go more and more of this false sense of self. And we recognize that this being needs to be taken care of. And so does that one and all of the other ones. And when we can bring that into more equity, then I think that we can really take good care of ourselves and others without a self-consciousness around it, without that kind of sacrifice, that kind of martyrdom sacrifice. And like you said, so many people really are conditioned maybe to live through their children. I noticed what a burden that felt like for myself when my mother basically wanted me to be able to do the things that she wasn't able to do, that she wished she could do. But it's a burden in some ways, to kind of be stuck with that as a young person, like parents who want their sons or daughters to have a certain career or whatever. Can we really let go of our own kind of ideas of what success means when we're supporting our children, encouraging them to live according to what really is valuable to them, that living through someone else and kind of bolstering up the ego, which is all this kind of false structure anyway. And it's doomed for grief and unhappiness. Can we let go of that and really bring our whole attention more into the present moment and our reflection on the way things actually are, standing on our own, like you said, you know, more in line with reality. I don't know if that's making much sense either, but I appreciate the points you made. Thank you.
I'll let others speak because there are quite a few hands up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Serena?
Yeah, you just really touched on some things that were coming up for me because, of course, what you're discussing today is really what's up for me right now. And I guess I'm looking at the darkness of such a loss of a spouse after 25 years and suddenly being alone is huge, and it's thick. And I guess the thing is to observe the attachment, because clearly I was very attached to Ron, and the way it was, which was being a team to approach life together. And now there's no one here to talk these things over with. It's a real sense of aloneness and loneliness. So the letting go, I guess, is just bringing more attention into the present moment. And I do try to do that, but that darkness of the grief just envelops everything at this point in time. And maybe it's a matter of time and keep practicing, just really look at more and more the way it is right now, which is basically I'm okay. I mean, I'm still in my home, I'm not homeless. I feel alone, but I'm here with you all. It's just huge. And I guess it just takes time. So I guess anything else you could say on the actual letting go? I don't know if there's anything besides just observing it more and more.
Yeah. I mean, I think really accepting, as as you're saying, it's a big change. And it is true that then we notice our attachments, and it's not just the love we have for someone, and we're going to miss them. Like Ayya Chitananda and I, we've been living together for 10 years now. Yeah. And we're a team. And, we do so much together and we talk about, if one of us dies, of course, there's going to be a big kind of transformation that has to happen in the mind and in all of your habits, because this is a person you talk to about what we should do and how to help someone, or how to, like deal with certain challenges. And I so much relate to what you're saying about, okay, that person's gone, and then you got to create new habits, new patterns. How do I work with this problem that I used to like talk to that person about? And, that kind of thing is, and then of course, most people go through life without really having an idea, I think, of, what happens beyond this material life. And I'm not sure if that statement I just made is true or not, but, to what degree do we reflect on the fact that on the material level, we're separate. But on the ultimate level, there is no separation. And how much of our practice really carries us beyond the kind of thinking mind to the real direct experience of true reality. And when you're talking about, okay, I'm going to try to be more present in the moment, that's why it's in the present moment that we touch that reality. And it's in the present moment that the mind can become still enough to see the real truth of what doesn't change. And of course, that can really feel difficult to access when there's so much change to deal with, And one of the things I don't think I said at all in my little monologue a minute ago was that so much of our happiness depends on our connections with other people, our friends, our family, those places, those social structures where people are more embedded in a community and they feel that connection. And a lot of times we are very alone in the culture, in this Western, more materialistic kind of culture, but we can remedy that. For example, coming together like we are today, where we start to connect with each other and we see that we're all going through certain flavors of the same stuff, dealing with greed, hatred, and delusion, dealing with, how do we interact with each other in skillful ways, and how do we develop our own inner stability and a baseline of happiness and contentment, and then that ability to let go of our attachments. So there's a lot of good work that you're doing right now inside. And the natural way of life with all of its impermanence and dukkha and not self reality pushes us, those heavenly messengers of aging, sickness, and death. It kind of pushes us in the direction of freedom and real peace. So I just want you to know we're here, and everyone here either has experienced this or will, one way or another. And it's good to remember that when things feel really rough. And we can always recognize that there are situations worse than the one we're in, which is helpful sometimes to think about. And that, to really know, directly experience ourselves, ultimate reality, if you want to call it that, nibbana, that is right here available in this present moment. And I really want to encourage you. And I don't know, I don't think it's so easy from our own perspective to see our own changes. But you're in a different place now than you were last week. And I can tell that. And the week before. So it already is healing. Yeah. Thank you, Serena. Anne? You're muted, my dear.
I am, and I'm happy to go ahead, but I think Regina's first.
No, you go ahead. It's okay.
Okay, fine. I'm just experiencing an immense amount of gratitude this morning, being here. And the Ayyas have been very important in my life in recent years in some different ways. And so I'm very grateful. Even when people talk about giving things away, they helped us clear out our house. And I'm thinking, well, find somebody who needs something. I mean, that's sort of what I really learned then, to find a good home for your things. Those of you who think you're getting rid of things, we were fortunate in many ways to meet the Ayyas. And the other thing I want to say is that in the concept of self-love, I heard a senior teacher talk about this, and what came to me in that conversation or that listening, I'm not sure that the senior teacher who said this, but to me, the importance is it's important to have enough self-love that I'm not walking around in my interactions and meeting new people as though I'm wearing a label on my head that says, love me. So I think that's the feeling to hold, that I like to hold, of not carrying that into relationships as a lead item. So, and then the other thing about helping people, I mean, I'm living now in a Zen inspired community, and there's just so many opportunities in little ways to help people. And maybe I'll just share one that I wasn't even really helping somebody, but I just finished teaching a class I teach water aerobics, and everybody had gone except me, and there's me in the pool, and a woman comes in with a very obviously mentally disabled husband, and she's fully clothed, and he gets in the pool, and he's very cheerful and chatting, but he's not very oriented. And he gets out of the pool and he goes in the hot tub, and I'm chatting to her, and it's a very interesting conversation. And then I realized that we actually can't see him in the hot tub from where we're sitting. So I just got up. It's sort of like your lost dog. It's the same sort of instinct. So I walked just up to the corner to make sure he was okay. And then actually she was telling it was lunchtime. So I sort of said, oh, come on, John, let's get out of the pool. Your wife's waiting for you. And he walked out with me. And, it was just a very natural thing for me to be doing that. And she said to me the next day, she said, I was so touched that you checked on John in the hot tub. And so, I felt pleased that she told me that. It hadn't been I didn't really think about being helpful, but I was. And so I think it's sort of good to notice those things when we can have gratitude for the opportunities to be helpful. And that being helpful is a healing, I think. So that's just what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Anne. When you talked about how we helped with some of the things you were wanting to leave behind when you moved, we're sitting on the rug here. The shrine room has one of the carpets you gave us right here. But you also, when my mom was dying and I was needing to pass on her things. You helped a lot with that.
I remember the eyeglasses collection she had. Yeah.
Yeah, there were many things that you
Yeah.
took and you brought to places where they could be used, and then the turnaround. We benefited a lot from the things that you offered us. Desks and chairs and carpets and all kinds of wonderful things that are helpful for the Hermitage and the meditation center, and that feeling of being able to share something that can be used, and with that heart of giving. It's very, very beautiful. And then to remember that the Buddha says, yeah, this is a resource for the mind. This is something that helps the mind to be happy, to feel uplifted when we reflect on the fact that we are generous and we are kind and we are, living a virtuous life. And I liked what you said about not going through life with this wanting others to love us, to give us the sense of our own well-being, that we can develop that in ourselves. So it's not going through life needing, but going through life giving. And it's not like it's like if we feel we need something, there's nothing wrong with that. But then how do we bring forward or empower our own ability to fulfill that, and find it in our relationships also, but also through giving. I don't know. Did that make sense, Anne?
Yeah, it does. And actually, I'm reminded another thing that was very touching to me. My son's a very pragmatic sort of person, and he's in the medical profession, and he was giving a public talk, and he said, one of the things that I do with my team is listed on a poster in my office. And he said, the poster says, if you're feeling discouraged, find somebody to encourage, which I was really touched that was part of his experience. I mean, he sort of jokes about, oh yeah, Mom, I'm getting quite Zen, but there it was. So, I mean, it was very touching to me that he brought that to his team. And so, yeah. So thank you. I've taken a lot of time, but thank you.
Thank you, Anne. I mean, last night, after the sutta study, Ayya, Chitananda and I did some more meditation together. And then, before I went to bed, I was thinking about how amazing it is that the human mind can reflect on its experience and make changes. And not only that, but really open up to understanding the true nature of reality, the true nibbana. Open up to pure consciousness. Open up to what lies beyond this whole experience of being in the human realm. It's like, it's amazing. What an opportunity.
I know.
Yeah. Thank you, Anne. Regina? You're muted.
I wanted to share an experience that I had with giving that I still go back to and reflect on it, which was when my partner was ill and needed a lot of care over a longer period of time. I was his main caregiver, and we had helpers, but there were certain things that he wanted to have done by me, and it was around the clock. And it took about 16 months. It was very intense care. And afterwards, I'm not sure. I mean, it's impossible to sort of separate what's grief and what's exhaustion and things like that. But afterwards, I was really exhausted for several years from the caretaking. I mean, it was so intense. And for a long time, I thought, wow, I really have given way too much of me, way too much. Like, I don't want to go into too much detail because it takes too much time. But basically, I was like, I should never ever do this again. I didn't have this to give and things like that. However, now and then afterwards it was really cool. I broke my leg, so I was just flatlined for a whole long time, 12 weeks. Then COVID happened, and I could just stay home and rest, and I didn't have to go to work, which was gift from heaven for me, right?
It's good.
And it was just amazing how everything went together, and I got a long time to rest. Super important. And even later on, when anybody needed help, I felt like, oh, I can do this much. And then I have to stop because I go right back into this old exhaustion. And now I'm through it. And I am so well. I am so happy. I'm well. People seek me out. It's really amazing, you know. And I was wondering, it was a situation when I felt like maybe I don't have much choice. I would really like to provide the end of life that this person is wishing for to the best of my ability. And that's mostly why I did it. And now I look back and I'm so glad I did it. I'm so glad that I gave nearly more than I had during this period of time. I knew it was finite. I knew it would end. And it cost me a lot. But at the same time, now I feel like, whoa, it's just coming all right back to me. I mean, it's not a trade or anything, but I feel like I'm so much better for it. And maybe this is just the logic that my little mind brews together. But it also feels like there is something really beautiful happening right now. So I wanted to share this for everybody who feels like they have to stretch themselves way too far because they are in a situation that has not changed yet. Thank you.
Thank you, Regina. You know, and sometimes I think, you know, we hear about spiritual practitioners who really stretch themselves, you know, to practice and all of that. But human beings do this for way less important things, extreme sports, or, you know, they push themselves hard, and we have more capacity sometimes than we think, but we do need somehow to find the right balance. It's so I really appreciate your story. It's so hard sometimes to know from within the experience. And yeah, it's something to take into account. You know, and we can observe it to some degree too, you know, like, you know, as I get older, my body needs more rest sometimes. But then when is it too much rest and not enough activity? You know, and it's like, you know, like really looking at, sometimes I work really hard physically and I feel so good from it. You know, it's just a huge experiment for us, you know. And Ajahn Chah was always like, sleep little, eat little, talk little. And his disciples are often like, yeah, you don't need to sleep, you know, go to, you know, like practice into the night and then get up early in the morning and practice. And sometimes that's really good. And then now the story is somehow changing. People are seeing, research results of the need for sleep, and they're, talking more about, like, well, we do have to get enough sleep. And, all of these things can be so difficult to sort out, but and as you say, it's like if you were observing it just in a small window of time, you wouldn't know about this kind of like longer span of results coming back. Is fascinating. I think at the crux of it, we somehow have to connect to our intuition. Again, intuition is closer to this idea of, being still and letting answers come up from the depths of our psyche, or the Dhamma, you might say. I mean, there was something that told you to keep going. And, I'm glad it's turned out the way it has, of course. Thank you, Regina. Adrienne.
Hello. So as I was listening and I'm looking back in my experience, what makes me happy is when I feel confident about myself, when I love myself. And who I want to be, actually, of course, the lifetime changed multiple times, depending on the condition that I was in. When I was younger, I wanted to see the world and ambitious. When I'm in my middle age, I wanted to build careers and be capable, be recognized as being capable in career. And one thing I noticed is that I'm the happiest when I'm in the community that everybody is accepting of me. That's when I'm the most happy. But at the same time, I also know that a stable community is where everybody take precepts, and the words coming out from them are encouraging and is rightful. So sometimes that I come across many people that wanted to save the world. There are people that feel happy living through their children, like my parents. My father's very proud of us. He is happy when people say that, oh, you're so-and-so's father, you're doing a good job raising your kids. And my mother is so happy living through us. Everything she buy are in a set of 6. There's herself, my father, and 4 children. And lately we found that when we're going through her things, we saw that she has a crystal collection of 6 pigs in sizes from the biggest to the smallest. And she's happy being a mother. And my older sister is happy to be a mother. And my second sister is happy to be the leader of the world if she wants to be, and we all embrace that. We're all happy because we're in a community that we embrace who you want to be. And it doesn't have to be just one time in life. It can be multiple times as you change, depending on the condition you are in. So it's just some little thing that I realized and I want to share.
Thank you, Adrienne. Joyce?
Serena is in my heart and mind right now, and I keep thinking of this story, which I think is a Buddhist story of a woman who lost her child and was really, really lost in grief. And I think it was the Buddha who counseled her to go and visit with the other people in the village and to ask if they had ever lost anybody. And to me, that is such a healing story. And a long time ago, I think I had just moved to California, and I just mentioned how afraid I was of death. And the person I was talking to was so shocked by that. And it led me to go to Stephen Levine workshops, huge workshops. It was during the AIDS
epidemic.
Mm.
And I just got my fill of hearing these stories and to hear the responses of Stephen and Andrea. It absolutely changed my life, and I believe it led me to the spiritual path. And it was early on, because I grew up in Chicago. We didn't have anything like this to access and to heal. And it's what I most needed. I think I have been truly blessed in my life to have been led step by step into just the most amazing opportunities to grow in spirituality. And so I wonder if you would at least just comment a little bit about the first story that I mentioned about going house to house to see if other people had also experienced loss. Because I'm just really hoping that that could be helpful to Serena.
Yeah, I know Serena knows that story well. It's usually the story of the mustard seed. The Buddha, according to tradition, told her he could help her. She was carrying her dead baby around with her, not accepting that it was dead, but wanting it to be healed. And the Buddha said, according to the story, I can help you, but you need to find a mustard seed, which is very common in every household. But you need to bring it from a house that hasn't had any death. And then, of course, she goes from house to house, and every time she asks for mustard seed, they say, sure. And then she says, but has there been any death here? And then they tell her the story of the child they've lost, or the parent they've lost, or the partner they've lost. And by the time she goes to many houses, she's ready to accept the death of her child, because she sees that this is the way it is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that phrase, this is the way it is a powerful one in our tradition. And I've probably shared this story many times, but I heard that, one day when Ajahn Chah was, sitting below his kuti and all the people coming to talk to him, there was one man from the local village who was crying and crying, and he was crying so much he couldn't tell Ajahn Chah what was wrong. So Ajahn Chah would talk to other people, and then he'd come back to him. And finally, he was able to say that his wife and 7 children had died the day before from eating poison mushrooms. And Ajahn Chah's response was, this is the way it is. And immediately the man, his countenance cleared. He's like, yeah, it's of course, that on the face of it, that could sound really like a very harsh thing to say, but of course it was said with this kind of compassion and understanding. This man had heard the teachings all his life. To come back to, this is how human life is, this happens. It doesn't mean that grief is immediately gone. How do you adjust to not having your wife and 7 children anymore? It takes time. It takes reflection. It takes practice to really embrace the heavenly messenger of death, to really see where it's pointing, and that we will all die. We will all lose people we love. Another time when a mother came to the Buddha and was grieving the loss of a child. This happened a lot, of course, during that time. Childbirth was very risky, and many children died. And this time the mother was talking about her daughter Jiva, and she was so full of grief and beside herself. And the Buddha said, which Jiva are you mourning for? There are thousands of them in in the charnel grounding, referring to all the lifetimes, referring to all the deaths. And then she completely, her countenance cleared, and she got it. Right. This is how it is. The way it is. This is the way it is. And Patachara, whose story was also very dramatic, another bhikkhuni. So the woman who brought her child around in, the mustard seed story, she became a bhikkhuni and became enlightened. And so did another bhikkhuni named Patachara. The story of her life is that she actually lost both of her children, her husband, and her parents and her brother all on the same day. Another dramatic life experience. And she went crazy. And she's wandering, babbling, and clothes all ripped off and just like totally out of her mind. And she wanders into the monastery at Savatthi, where the Buddha is and where he's teaching. And the lay people try to keep her out, keep the crazy lady out. But the Buddha sees and he says, no, bring her here. So somebody throws a robe over her, around her, and she comes to the Buddha. And I can't right now. I remember what he said to her, sister, regain your mindfulness. And just like that, she cleared. And he talked to her about the impermanent nature of things. And in that moment, she became a stream enterer. And then he advised her to go to the bhikkhunis, and she became a bhikkhuni, and she became one of the foremost teachers. And in the Therigatha, there's a set of verses where she's talking to other bhikkhunis who've lost their children. And she said, when this child came into your life, you didn't know where it came from. And when it died, you don't know where it's going. But if you did know, you wouldn't grieve. Giving that longer view and an understanding that we pass through this life, but we came from somewhere and we're going somewhere. And the value of what you're doing now in this life by practicing and developing ensures that the going somewhere is also going to be a productive passage. Or ultimately, the complete understanding of reality and the complete freedom from suffering. So what we can do when we have someone in our life, my dear sister, all of you, everyone else in family and friendship, is to encourage each other as much as possible. And live as fully as we can in the Dhamma. And be happy. Joni?
Could I just say one more thing?
Okay.
Yeah. Let's see. I guess what I would wish for Serena is that she could find others who are experiencing this similar situation, where they could share really honestly from the heart what they're going through and receive the support of the others. I mean, some of these groups have leaders and others are just people who just congregate together. But the heart needs healing right now for Serena. And this is what I would like for her. Anyway, I hope she's still on the call. And
oh, she's here. Yeah, she's nodding and agreeing with you. And
To reach out and not be alone, because to be alone, you're just gonna, I mean, I know this from myself because I've been through this. You go in circles and there's no way out. But with the help of others, like we have here, it's just enormously helpful. So I just wish her healing. So
yeah.
I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Joyce. Yeah, I've seen it in different ways. You know, you have to feel what's right for you. I think finding that kind of connection and groups can be really helpful. And then I've also seen people who find other ways, maybe with you know, like you say, the spiritual group or the friends or family or whatever is available. You know, just reach out, Serena. Yeah. Yes, Serena.
Yeah, this today is incredibly helpful to me. I can feel a little bit of lifting of the darkness. I hope it'll stay away if I can maintain the mindfulness. But yeah, I realize that I need some support. And besides, I mean, even beyond this is the most important, the Dhamma support right now. But I also need some, someone here. And I am trying to find a group, a grief group, and a therapist. Not so easy in this state since COVID. A lot of people have left the professions, but I'll keep trying. I mean, people don't even answer the phone anymore. If you leave a message, they just don't even return it. So it's like, keep going, don't give up. Somebody's there somewhere. But also, some things are in place. I have one neighbor across the street who does check on me every day and brings me some food when she cooks something, which is really a gift and helpful because I'm definitely not cooking right now. And my best friend from California is flying in Tuesday to spend a week with me. And I know that will be uplifting, and I hope will give some space to some of this grieving. And also, my sister in California is working on, she and her husband moving here. They're trying to get one of the senior apartments in this town. So if those things, I think those things will help. So there are some things coming in, but the most important is this time with you all. So thank you so much.
Yeah. And don't forget, Serena, you can always call us.
I think I've thought of that last night, when I was just crying on the phone with a friend who'd lost her husband 5 years ago, and it just brought a lot up and out, and I had a really big cry, which I think was needed. I probably was holding it down. It seems to have helped, but yeah, I thought last night about calling you, and I'll text you about a time when we could talk for a few minutes because I have a couple of specific questions regarding things that you know about that, were factors here. Thank you.
Sure. Sure, Serena. Hillary?
Hi everyone. As most of you probably already know, I lost my husband 5 months ago. So Serena is a husband of 30 years. We met since we were 17. So to me, it was too sudden, too soon. But then, so I just want to let you know you're not alone. So I totally understand the grief that you were talking about, the darkness of the grief that you were talking about. To me, what's very important to me during the past 5 months is the Buddha's teaching. Just like what Ayya just said, the recollection on the death, which is absolutely certain. To me, it's not just certain, it's absolutely certain. When I first heard it, even though I've heard it so many times, but then when I heard it after Chi's death, it just kind of like a hammer hitting on my head. Like the death is absolutely certain. And there's even when I always dwell on that his death is too soon. He was only 57. The second teaching was there's uncertain on the time of the death, and how the death happens is never certain. So to me, that is another big hammer hitting my head. That it's never too soon. You never really can expect when it's going to happen. So I know the grieving is still in me. Even has been 5 months, but I just accept the way it is. As the Chi before, he's also a practitioner. So before he passed, he told me to have faith in the Buddha, to have faith in the Dhamma, and to have faith in the Sangha, and then to have faith in our virtuous behavior and action. So so every time when it becomes too difficult to me, I remind my own faith in the three jewels, the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha, and also our own virtuous behavior. And Serena, you have the beautiful Sangha here. So never afraid to reach out. We are here together. Even I'm also in grief as well. So, but you have us, and feel free to call me anytime.
Thank you, Hillary. Mira.
Thank you, Hillary, for those words. That was very beautiful. I really appreciate you and the Sangha. And Serena, I just wanted to make a suggestion, which is I think you had a social worker helping in the process, if I'm tracking correctly. And that would be a person to talk to ask for, who could like not just ask, who could help you like get connected to the other kind of supports that might feel right to you. So just an encouragement to check with that person. Yeah. Yeah. And if I could say one other thing, which I think Hillary just said way more beautifully, like when I think of the "it's like this" comment, like in the place of grief, it's like part of how it is grief is like this. It's dark or it's exhausting, it's somatic. It's like that's part of how it is, just to add that. Thank you. Thanks for the Sangha. Thank you also, Ayas, for how you're holding us all. Yeah.
Thank you, Mayra. It takes courage to be with, excuse me. It takes courage to be with the way it is. But without that, we just live on the surface. And we've all been plenty of places where people just want to paint it pretty on the outside and not really go into these deep places. But it's not real life. And it's not real community either. So I'm grateful for everyone's practice, your willingness to, and your courage to be with what's difficult. First noble truth, you turn towards the dukkha and understand it. That's the way through. That's the way to real happiness. Thank you.